If you're using a primary donate style system, that means that your backup regulator is around your neck on a necklace. So whether you're diving doubles or side mount or even a single tank with something like an advanced open water style package, you've got your backup around your neck on some kind of necklace. So this would be our short hose or a necklace regulator. And when it comes to how this regulator sits and where it's accessed, there are a couple of do's and don'ts I want to go over, as well as how to make your own necklace for this setup. We want our necklace regulator to live just below our chin. It should be easy to access. We should be able to put it in our mouth, breathe, and look around. We need it to be practical and useful, but we don't want it to be loose to where it can get caught, tangled up, or become inaccessible for some reason. So its location is partially dependent on the hose length. Typically something between 18 and 22 inches is going to put us where we need to be. But the necklace is another important factor. If our necklace is too long, it's going to hang off to the side, and the necklace or the regulator could get caught up and inaccessible. There are plenty of commercially available necklaces that are out there. There's thick ones made out of silicone. There's ones made out of bungee. I actually prefer how the silicone ones feel compared to thin bungee like this, but they're typically not the right size and they're not adjustable. And we use bungee for everything else, so I just end up using a little bit of bungee for my necklace. Now, there's a few different knots that you can use to make your own necklace. The most common is going to be a double fisherman's bend. So you take your bungee, and you start with a loop, cross back over the loop, and then you have your two loops there that you go underneath, and you end up with a little tail and this sliding knot. Now slide out some slack and do the exact same thing on the other side. Loop, cross back over with your second loop, and then go through. There's other knots that will work, but this is just what I find to be the most common and the easiest. Now what we have here is an adjustable loop. And this isn't ready to go just yet. We've got to kind of cinch these knots in. We need to cut these ends and burn them so they're not out and about. But just to give you a basic idea, we can go around the regulator mouthpiece here. You can see it's adjusted nice and tight. If I accidentally loosened it or put these too close together, it's very easy to just tighten up. And we want those pretty much even. So the double fisherman bend is super simple and it works really well for securing your short hose to your necklace, but it's not complete, and I left it incomplete on purpose. We need to get rid of these tails and burn the ends to make this cleaner. That's not just for aesthetics, whether we have the bungee here or even further back. If we went to switch to this necklace regulator and grabbed this piece of bungee with our lip, especially if we're in a stressful situation and we took a big breath in, we're gonna shoot water to the back of our throat. And if we're in a stressful situation, it's silly to add more stressors on top of that. So we'll go ahead and cut these back and burn them so that this is nice and clean. Now that we've got our knots done and our necklace secure, the last thing to think about is length. If we didn't estimate this properly and we realized it's too long, we can just tie a little knot in the back. And later on we would want to correct this by pulling the tail out on one side and taking the slack up, and that way we have a continuous amount of bungee around for our necklace. The next thing that we're going to want to think about with our necklace is location. So if it's too far forward, our lip's going to catch it, just like one of those tails would. We can push it back over top of the zip tie, and that's going to be much more secure, and it's not going to interfere with the mouthpiece at all. Now, having the bungee behind the zip tie is definitely more comfortable. It gives us full access to the mouthpiece. We're not going to catch the bungee in our lip. The downside is if we were to yank this, maybe it got caught on something, or we're just very aggressive trying to access this regulator, it's not going to come free very easily. It actually also runs a risk of removing the mouthpiece if we were to yank it hard enough. And that's compared to having it a little bit more forward of that zip tie, and we could just yank it free if we had to aggressively pull. In my mind, either of those is appropriate. I don't like it being forward because that interferes with my ability to access gas unrestricted. Having it further back seems very reasonable because this sits underneath my chin. It's only for me. Pulling and yanking on this bungee is not something that I would expect to happen in normal circumstances. Now, with that said, I actually prefer to have my bungee on the exhaust of the regulator, like this, which prevents those issues entirely. We can pull and yank on this. If the exhaust pops off, the regulator still functions and I can still get gas. I just get more bubbles in my face when I exhale. This greatly reduces chances of bungee getting caught in the mouthpiece when I go to deploy it and increases my access to this regulator as a whole. So with our double fisherman bin, we can go behind the zip tie, in front of the zip tie, as long as we push that back so our lips don't interfere with that bungee, or we can even go around the exhaust diaphragm just like I have on this black bungee right here. Obviously you wouldn't have two of these, I just left this on for the video. So those are a couple of the basics, and remember what we're trying to achieve here. We want this necklace regulator to be below our chin. We want it snug up against our body. We don't want it dangling down, interfering with anything else. And we also need it to be comfortable to breathe off of. We can put this regulator in our mouth, look to the left, look to the right, breathe off it comfortably while it is secure. Another way to secure a necklace to a second stage is to actually take off the zip tie that holds the mouthpiece in place, tie 2 knots onto your thin bungee, come underneath this zip tie and tighten it. So what we're left with there is a bungee necklace that's secured to this zip tie here. Some people will put a second zip tie on here. In this example, I'm just using the regular mouthpiece zip tie. In my opinion, this is not an appropriate way to rig our necklace to our second stage. And the reason why is the purpose of this zip tie is to hold the mouthpiece in place. The mouthpiece is an important part of our second stage, an important part of our gas delivery system, and we're reducing the integrity of that system by adding bungee in underneath the zip ties. We're also increasing the chance of losing our mouthpiece by having a little bit of force applied to this bungee. In my opinion, there's no comparison between a setup like this and a fisherman's double bend knot. This is significantly more hazardous. It reduces the integrity of our breathing system because the mouthpiece is an important part of our breathing system, and this interferes with the normal way that we attach the mouthpiece in place. Now, even if we add a second zip tie back here and leave the normal mouthpiece zip tie in place, our chance of accidentally removing the zip tie by applying a little force to this bungee are increased. And I've seen people do this, very experienced divers even. They go to switch to the second stage, they pull it up, and it pulls the mouthpiece right out. It doesn't actually take much force. What usually happens is this mouthpiece gets wiggled loose because its integrity from the zip tie is reduced, having extra bungee underneath it. And then one day they go to use it and they end up with just a mouthpiece instead of a second stage. So that's a great way to make a bad situation worse. If we want access to our second stage, we need to get access quickly. So I would advise against anything that reduces your mouthpiece integrity and your access to that gas. I would urge you to look at a double fisherman's bend instead. And whatever you do, make sure that this is nice and accessible and comfortable while being close to your chin. Remember to take your mouthpiece integrity seriously. And if you've got any questions about setting up a necklace regulator, feel free to give me a holler. Thank you for watching.